Hello, hello.
Thank you very much for joining. We're joined here by Pat Duffy. He's co-founder of the Giving Block. So they've been working with crypto donations, helping charities receive crypto donations and helping businesses give crypto donations. And they've worked with a lot of companies now and raised loads of money for good causes. So really grateful to Pat for joining us. Pat will be sharing everything. Briefly, this Tech for Sustainability webinar series is sponsored by Tracr. They're a connected value chain platform for the diamond industry, working to foster innovation, sustainable business practice, and ensure consumer trust in the diamond industry, demonstrating provenance, traceability, and authenticity of natural diamonds and helping local economies wear their minds. So very grateful to Tracr. Everyone can check them out. That's community.tracr, Tracr.com. So big thanks to Tracr. And thank you, Pat, for joining us. Welcome and to the Crypto Curry Club. And thanks for joining us. To everyone who has joined us, a few points. If you've got any points you want to make, we've got a chat function at the bottom. So please do post any comments there. We've got a Q&A. Any questions you've got at any stage for Pat, please do post them in there. We want this to be as interactive as possible. So any questions you post will get answered. And we've also created a poll for anyone who joins. You'd be very grateful if you answer the poll, because when I started speaking to Pat earlier, I got mocked for not knowing who Kevin Hart is, and then Pat shamed himself for not knowing who Lewis Hamilton is. So just a quick poll, who everyone wants, if anyone wants to have a bit of fun with that and show that Lewis Hamilton really is a lot more famous than Kevin Hart, would be great. But everyone, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Pat, and look forward to hearing from you.
Yeah, Erica, thanks for having me. I guess first and foremost, the poll. I think you loaded that question by saying that everyone should say Lewis Hamilton is more famous. We hope that everyone answers the poll honestly and shames Erica for not knowing who Kevin Hart is. He's very famous. But obviously, we have a video I'll show at some point during the presentation. But yeah, I'm just going to go through the basics. Pretty much what we do as a company, as the Giving Block, is we set up nonprofits to take cryptocurrency donations. And that's kind of been happening over the last decade. Like, as old as Bitcoin is, there have been some nonprofits, like a handful, that have taken donations in it. But we turned it more so into like a legitimate industry by focusing not just on setting up nonprofits to take it with a technical solution, but creating a fundraising platform and then an ecosystem of corporate partners, creating kind of the corporate social responsibility arm of crypto. So in addition to just setting up nonprofits with like the equivalent of a PayPal gateway for crypto donations, we wanted to make sure that crypto companies, the apps that you manage your portfolios in, the sites where you're checking crypto prices, the crypto exchanges, the crypto news outlets, kind of all the big voices and central locations in crypto. We got them involved with the charities, so the charities could then leverage those networks, get in front of a lot of people with crypto and say, hey, please donate to us. And then we would get more mainstream crypto adoption, obviously, just by getting all of these charities with their millions of followers on Twitter and beyond to start talking about crypto more actively and doing active fundraising. So I'll go through our site and talk through a lot of what we do from like a nonprofit standpoint. The main thing, I guess, we're touching upon is the fact that the reason nonprofits rather accept crypto donations in the US in particular is we have 501c3 status. Different countries have different designations that are very similar, but it's pretty much like a legal designation for a nonprofit entity that allows someone to give a donation to that nonprofit and then pay no capital gains tax on the asset that they donate. So that would be the difference between donating, say, with a credit card in the US or donating a property asset, so stocks, a cryptocurrency, a house, a car, whatever it might be. The difference there is like if I was going to donate $1 million to a nonprofit at the end of this year, and I'm a major donor and I do it every year, if this year I bought some cryptocurrency, say 5 years ago, that had appreciated a bunch, I now have two options. I can give that $1 million in cash or a credit card or a wire to a nonprofit directly, and I can get that write-off. Or I can donate cryptocurrency directly if a nonprofit takes it. Now the nonprofit still gets that $1 million. They pay no capital gains tax on it because of their nonprofit status. I pay no taxes on the $1 million I just donated. And I can take the $1 million I otherwise would have left in my bank, rebuy back my position in Bitcoin or whatever crypto. And now I'm holding tax-free the equivalent amount of crypto. And I just arbitrage, say, $200,000 worth of capital gains taxes. So there's a huge opportunity for individuals, for companies, for anyone who's holding appreciated crypto to donate to nonprofits in cryptocurrency versus cash. And then secondarily, beyond that original tax incentive, the second reason people give crypto is what we call like a high five donation. So pretty much people and companies that are super excited that someone like the American Cancer Society, the United Way, Boys and Girls Clubs of America, Save the Children, No Get Hungry, like all these giant nonprofits we work with, and we work with a bunch of small and mid-sized ones as well. But they're just fired up that they're taking crypto, and they think it's cool to work with these like really well-known, really legitimate brands that have huge reach in the traditional marketplace, both as a means of generating new crypto users on their platforms, but also just driving mainstream adoption, kind of changing this narrative around crypto, as it's still kind of uncomfortable to talk about around the dinner table. So I'll share my screen here. I'll go over some of the basic stuff that we do. And then, of course, like Erica said, if you have any questions, put them in the chat. And I'll rip through it pretty quickly so don't get stuck on too much. So just briefly, this is our team. We also have 4 developers. We're a small team based out of the US. We work with nonprofits in the UK and all around the world to accept crypto donations. A couple things we do, we have an auto conversion feature using Gemini as our backend exchange. Just makes it easier to convert to cash and not deal with price volatility, which is an accounting headache. Automatically generates tax receipts for donors, regardless of their jurisdiction. And then a handful of other things. We have a widget that allows a front end for nonprofits to take their gifts both on their site and on our site as a platform. And we work with a bunch of really awesome mainstream nonprofits, universities, and faith-based groups. Yeah, I'll go here. I'll just jump over to the site. Just do it down before we dive into some of the actual content. But like if you're on our site, this is where you would come to donate crypto. This is one thing that we did differently, which is super important and why a lot of companies in the crypto space choose to work with us versus individual nonprofits. All of these nonprofits not only use our system, but they're a part of our platform, meaning people going online to donate crypto to nonprofits are going to find our platform and then select the nonprofits either individually or a group of nonprofits they want to give to all at once as a secondary consideration. So starting with a crypto donation in mind, ending with the nonprofits. And what that's led to is about 80% of donations come through our site versus the nonprofit site. It's the same widget on both. But it's awesome that people who are looking to give to nonprofits can find this big pool, and they're all leveraging one another's brands and SEO to form this larger voice versus all the nonprofits who were fundraising individually prior to that didn't have as much reach. And then from a corporate standpoint, what that's allowed us to do is with a bunch of these nonprofits, we've connected them with corporate actors, say like CoinDesk for Consensus for New York Blockchain Week. This year, we did a COVID-19 fundraiser. Our overall COVID-19 fundraiser over a few months raised 1.7 million in crypto donations for the nonprofits. And then CoinDesk Consensus Conference, the distributed one, raised a little over 100 grand. And then on here, it's kind of the same thing, similar to our site. If you wanted to donate to one of our nonprofits, pick the crypto you want to give, and you would use our widget. So I guess I'll just run through one of these on the site. Say if it's International Medical Corps. If you wanted to donate crypto on our site, this widget also exists on the nonprofit sites. I pulled up the WaterAid one before we started. If you went to their site, want to get involved, you want to donate cryptocurrency specifically, just like you saw on the CoinDesk site and on our platform, it's a copy of this widget. It's an iframe, so it's super easy to copy and paste. You would select the amount of cryptocurrency you want to give. You could skip the form, pledge the amount. Obviously, Bitcoin's going on an absolute tear, so almost $13,500 a unit. You'd make a pledge, and then it would generate dynamic wallet addresses, each one being unique for the nonprofit. And that allows us to one-to-one pair with whatever email you put in here, even if you don't fill out the form, so that we can generate a tax receipt that goes to your email as soon as the transaction clears. That's our whole process from a technical standpoint. And then the rest of what we do, like 75% of our work, in addition to just setting up the nonprofits to take it, adding them to the platforms, people come through and give, is that third component, like you saw with the CoinDesk thing, which is coordinating with a bunch of different companies in the crypto space to leverage the nonprofit marketing power. The nonprofit gets that crypto audience to help them generate donations, and then the companies obviously get access to like giant mainstream audiences and the legitimacy of the brand. So it's a super happy, virtuous cycle. We don't have to go through these slides. Obviously, you guys get how crypto works, some of the standard stuff. I guess this is not necessarily on the nonprofit side, but just like a fun stat, if you guys want to look at this, is Bitcoin now, just because of the latest numbers, have it at like 101 million users worldwide. If you look at that versus Zelle, Google Pay, Venmo, and the Cash App, it's a significant financial ecosystem. And then another stat, I guess, for the dinner table with your family, you still work with or live with a bunch of non-believers. Cash App last quarter sold about $900 million worth of Bitcoin just in the Cash App alone, which was like $17 million in fees, I believe. Okay. And then in terms of the tax incentive, this is super important to note. If you bought Bitcoin at these different points in time, we show this, like this is one of the main reasons that nonprofits are taking this. This would be the value of the cryptocurrency that you would purchase, and you would owe in the US like 20% capital gains tax. Every country has their own rules on this. You can offset those taxes obviously by donating to a nonprofit and then rebuying back your position, as long as your country, your jurisdiction accommodates that. Yeah, and then depending on you buy or when you buy, any level of appreciation, you obviously have a tax offset opportunity. And then this right here is super important. When people are like, what does it look like for nonprofits to fundraise crypto? They obviously think it looks like chaos. Oftentimes, it's really just their normal marketing, and then providing an easy link for people to go to, say, Save the Children, make a donation, and then working with us on campaigns like this, like on our Bitcoin Tuesday, which is the big campaign we do at the end of every year. If you guys are familiar with Giving Tuesday, I know they have it in the UK. It's not as big as in the US, but it's a global day of giving. It's when the most donations happen. We run the community campaign for the Giving Tuesday Foundation for nonprofits that want to take cryptocurrency donations. And then this year we're working with, I'd have to pull up the current list, but like CoinDesk, BitThumb, trying to think of who else, Ledger, a bunch of different companies. I'd have to pull up the active list of companies that we're working with. But a ton of companies in the crypto space all come together. They put up sponsor dollars. If they want to match donations to the nonprofits, they do takeovers on their site to their applications, make it easy to give. Gemini, we obviously work with their back end. They'll do the same thing. And we pretty much just drive a bunch of fundraising outcomes. The nonprofits and the companies tag each other online. And then this year, we're going to be doing a big trivia tournament. So like the day before Giving Tuesday, which is December 1, we're going to do a trivia round where like everyone in crypto who wants to play can play. And then the last standing group, like whoever's left at the end of that trivia group, will get to play with the influencers in crypto on the second day, which will be like the championship round. And obviously we use all of that to generate donations for nonprofits, like a traditional corporate social responsibility initiative. And then lastly, I just, from like a technical standpoint, because I'm sure people want to know, like, what are the things that nonprofits care about taking it? Why haven't they been taking it for forever? Or are they scared about, like, what are their core considerations? From like a safety standpoint, they want an auto sell function more often than not. We have a handful of nonprofits that hold it, like a crypto endowment, which is awesome. Obviously, if you're into crypto, it's cool to be able to give crypto to a nonprofit and let them hold it and get the appreciation. But obviously, not nonprofits need it for their operational expenditures. So having the ability to turn on or off an auto sell feature to allow you to move in and out of that position, or rather just out of that position when they donate the crypto to you, is important. So you don't have any sort of price differences that screw with your accounting department. Donor receipts, you want to make sure that the donor who gives you crypto gets all the information they need without some arduous back and forth. Most nonprofits, before we were a company, just kind of set up a form on their site, and then you'd have to like get on a phone call with someone at the nonprofit, tell them about who you are, talk through your wallet address, send it to them in an email, walk them through how to open a wallet, send it to them. All of that stuff is super important. From a compliance standpoint, there's horror stories. I think it was Amazon Watch is one of them, but people who were using like a BitPay or a Coinbase Commerce were taking crypto donations prior to our system, and they were getting donations blocked at or above like $100,000. They were only able to sell, say, $10,000 a day once they got like a multi-million-dollar gift. So like end of 2017, early 2018, when Bitcoin started tapering off, there were nonprofits who were stuck holding the bag who could only sell like 10 grand a day. So you want to make sure you go through all the compliance layers and you set up an account that's an institutional account and not an individual wallet. If you have a nonprofit or you're working with a nonprofit, do not let them open up some wallet somewhere that isn't like an institutional account that they've KYC, AML, cleared everything, submitted their IDs. Otherwise, what'll happen is whoever opens that account, say, Jim in the accounting department, if they get $1 million gift, that $1 million gift will be assigned to Jim and not to the 501c3 or the UK nonprofit. And it's an absolute nightmare and certainly illegal. So last piece on compliance, if you're working with nonprofits who want to take crypto and you're not working with us directly, please, for the love of God, have them open an institutional account with an actual exchange, or everyone's going to get screwed. Fiat off-ramps, a lot of solutions. If you guys are early into crypto, anyone on the call, you've probably opened an account somewhere where you can move crypto onto an off-it, but you can't move it out of crypto into cash from the wallet provider that you're using. Nonprofits obviously need an account where they can't just take crypto and then have to open a second account to move it over there and sell it. And then also when you're working with exchanges, especially in the US, they're all FDIC insured once you convert to cash. You have a cash balance that's actually safe. Even if someone got into your account and like wired that cash to themselves somehow, you would still get that refunded to you by the exchange because it's insured. Efficiency, you want to make it easy for nonprofits to set up an account. Obviously, there's a lot of red tape, as you can imagine. We work with some universities, someone like a Save the Children, United Way, like billion-dollar nonprofits. They have giant boards, giant leadership teams. Everyone's got to sign off on everything. So when it comes to finally setting the thing up, there's going to be a million cooks in the kitchen. So you want to make an account setup super, super easy. Integration, also, our widget is an iframe, just so you can copy and paste it on your site, super easy. And then reporting and data, just make it really easy for the nonprofit to actually collect donor information if the donor wants to give it. We're really clear about that with our widget. If the donor wants to go through and give an anonymous gift, they're not anonymous to Gemini as an exchange. Gemini uses market surveillance. You can't send them a gift from like North Korea or some blacklisted crypto that's already been blocked. Yeah, pretty much the market surveillance and the surveillance happens on the exchange level. But if you're a donor and you want to give to a nonprofit without getting like direct mail sent to your mailbox for the rest of your life, you can absolutely go through anonymously. But I'd say like 25% probably of our donors do leave information. And if that is the case, the nonprofit obviously wants to access the information quickly, follow up with a thank you, and engage that donor. So we made that easy as well. So that's kind of the dry portion, how the company actually works. But I'm sure like Erica and the rest of the folks here are going to want to go through kind of what do some of the partnerships look like? How are the companies engaging with these nonprofits? How much have they fundraised? You know, are nonprofits getting more into it? Is this trend going to drive adoption? And we can dive into more of that, obviously, over the rest of our time. So I'll stop and take a breath, Erica, if we want to jump into any questions.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting. Thank you so much, Pat. I do have a bunch of those questions, and I think there are a few from other people. My first question is, have you, just out of interest, been able to trace where the crypto funds come from? Have you any data about that? What type of people? Is it from the old crypto investors? Is it from people new to crypto? Have you any data about the type of people that have been donating in crypto?
Yeah, so like through our widget, we're not like aggressively trying to track personal information on people. One, because crypto people hate that, obviously. But in terms of like who's putting in their information, it's everything you would expect. We tend to get like a younger donor demographic. It's more male than it is female. And we get a lot of folks donating from the US, but we get folks outside of the US as well. Yeah, generally speaking, I'd say like our donor demographic looks like 18 to 35-year-old, more male than female. And then in terms of recurring gifts, we get a lot more recurring donors in crypto. Like if they're connecting with a nonprofit and making a gift in cryptocurrency, partially because the mode of donation is limited. You don't have as many options where you can bounce between nonprofits. But also because I think there's just like an ideological thing, like they're excited the nonprofit takes crypto and there's like more of a kinship there. We get a lot of donors who just keep coming back. So recurring gifts is definitely a big part of it.
Cool, thanks. And regarding the nonprofits, is it them coming to you, or how have you been approaching them, and what sort of reactions have they had to crypto? Have they both mostly been pro crypto and approaching you proactively, or has it been a real battle to persuade them that it's worth their time to accept crypto?
Yeah, so we had to, I mean, at the beginning, for sure, it was like pulling teeth. So we had to more or less invent a marketplace. So like I worked at a nonprofit at the Lupus Foundation. I was trading cryptocurrency. I wanted to take crypto donations at the foundation just because we saw the Pineapple Fund and everything blow up end of 2017. Hundreds of millions of dollars got donated to nonprofits in like 3 weeks. And then I panicked and like tried to get them set up quickly. And it just became a huge pain in the butt. Once we did that, myself and our co-founder, Alex Wilson, like decided we could probably pitch this to other nonprofits. It took a while to like get the pitch down and like learn what the traditional questions are going to be. And for a while, it was like pulling teeth, trying to convince nonprofits. But pretty much after like the first half dozen pitches or so, like anytime we get into a room with a nonprofit, or now I guess a Zoom call, whatever it is, if we can have a conversation with their leadership team and talk them through it, once we get through 3 or 4 misconceptions, they're pretty much immediately on board. Like when they learn about the fact that it's obviously regulated, the tax incentive is huge for donors, there's a giant user base, and the number of nonprofits is still relatively small. Like there's a lot of acquisition strategy for donors who will otherwise go somewhere else to like earn those relationships. Mm-hmm. It's pretty point blank. They're just kind of worried about whether or not it's going to be difficult, and we kind of solve for that. But yeah, most of the misconceptions were really about like, this is dark web money, or it's completely untraceable, or it's completely unregulated. And then some of the other misconceptions are like, it's not backed by anything, right, where they'll be like, this stuff is valueless. And it's like, well, you know, it's worth whatever people are trading for it at the time. Let's say Bitcoin goes to zero tomorrow and another crypto takes its place. Great. That's a lot of appreciation in that new cryptocurrency that they're then going to donate to you. It doesn't even matter which crypto wins for a nonprofit because they're not investing. They're just accepting donations from people who are investing.
And then are they converting it straight into fiat?
For the most part, yeah. The larger nonprofits are definitely starting to lean more toward like setting up endowments, but that's just because they don't need it necessarily for their operations. But most nonprofits obviously need the money, especially like during COVID-19 times, just to like stay afloat and pay their staff.
No, thanks. And do you have any data about what sort of percentages of their funds are now coming from crypto? Is it bringing in new additional funds?
Oh yeah, so like most of the donors who give via crypto are brand new donors for all of the nonprofits.
Right.
Like we know that just based on the fact that like most donors are coming through our site, not even their site, which is where like the platform element comes in. In terms of like percentage of funds, the highest for any of our nonprofits is like 25% of this one small nonprofit's budget is now cryptocurrency donations, which is massive. Yeah, there was a women's shelter in Arizona that got a $65,000 Bitcoin donation last month. But yeah, in general, it's probably somewhere between, very low percentage and upwards of 10% of a nonprofit's budget, but it's definitely not negligible.
So it's an addition. There's no harm to them really to accept it.
Yeah, there's no harm other than, the time it takes to get set up. So it's just a cost benefit analysis. You don't want to like redo your site every 3 months and just like take up all your staff's time. So as long as it's easy to get set up and it gives you a new payment method, it's kind of point blank.
And have any of them found anything negative, you've got to ask it, from accepting crypto just because of the perception that, the wrong perception that Bitcoin is a scam or anything like that? Or have any of them struggled with that? Or has that really not been an issue anymore?
Yeah, 100%. So we just had our first like negative PR about anything. We had one donation that a hacker group claimed to have given to nonprofits. That was a couple of weeks ago. There was like a BBC.
It was in the news, yeah.
Yeah. And they claimed it. It hasn't been tied back to a hack or anything yet. It was just someone claimed to have done it online. So like we still need to do, use the market surveillance tech and like try to see if we can trace it back to any actual illicit activity. It could have been like high schoolers online who claimed it. That's literally the only time that we've even potentially had a transaction over thousands and thousands of donations that we've processed, which is obviously exponentially less fraud than say a credit card system. So like the downside is pretty much just misconceptions around statistically how often that sort of thing happens. Because when that happens in crypto, it's obviously a news story in a way that's happening with credit cards and payments all the time, and no one's ever going to talk about it because it's normal. So pretty much because people don't get how it works, there's like some risk of the reputational aspect. The story went away pretty quickly. But yeah, even when talking to those reporters, like the one downside is they'd be like, well, we looked into it and the FBI says they don't look into like hacked funds under like $1 million or some level like that if it's cryptocurrency. I go, is it the same for US dollars? And they go, yes. I was like, well, then why are you saying it that way? Like, why are you saying if it's crypto, like they're not going to trace? It's like they're not tracing it. So pretty much they're telling the whole story of what happens with their credit cards and everything else. There's, as far as we can tell, no additional risk to taking crypto versus other payments, other than the reputation based on like misconceptions in the media. It seems like there's exponentially less illicit activity in crypto because it is so traceable. So as far as we can tell, it's the safest type of donation you can take.
And where do you stand about privacy coins, for example, if someone were to want to donate Monero, for example, that can't be so easily tracked? Have you any policies on that?
Yeah, so we just take whatever Gemini allows. So Gemini takes Zcash currently, but not Monero. That's more just from like a regulatory standpoint. It's like whatever their list of coins are, like as our backend, we're just going to take whatever those top cryptos are.
And you trust them to do the compliance basically for you.
Yeah. And it's just like any other form of money. Like you wouldn't blame, we were using the analogy, well, two different analogies. One would be like the way that the misconceptions in crypto happen is like, you remember when Teslas were relatively recent and then like the technology was coming out and they were saying, okay, it's exponentially safer than human drivers already. But then the video came out of a Tesla hitting some guy on a bicycle and they were just like shut down manufacturing. The media blew up. And I was like, is that more or less likely? Because I know plenty of people on bicycles got hit by regular drivers. It's a game, it's a math thing, and then no one's doing the math. So that's one analogy. But then the other analogy is like, let's say privacy coins. If there are financial stakeholders outside of the nonprofits that we're serving who are willing to trade in those cryptocurrencies, they're completely regulated. They're reporting to FinCEN in the US. They're licensed banks. They have to go through all the same regulatory processes, and they're allowed to, take Zcash onto and off of Gemini. The idea that like by adding our layer of a nonprofit form, we're like collecting your email and your address to send you a note at Christmas time to say thanks for your gift. like we're supposed to somehow be stopping more people from using Zcash in an illicit way with that form than others would be is of course absurd. So as long as it's okay from a regulatory standpoint, like we're not going to be the ones who say, no, we're going to step in and stop that when the banks say it's fine.
Tara has just posted a question about the hack that related to the Children International on the Water project that you just mentioned. And going on to that, do you put the compliance owners on the charity, or you do all of the checks yourself? And then she's asking, what are the benefits or risks of this, and how do nonprofits view this? I.e., would they prefer to be managed by you, or would they be happier to take responsibility on themselves for crypto donations?
Yeah, so you definitely, so the only way you'd be putting it on yourself, quote unquote, would be if you weren't using an institution like an exchange, if you opened up just a wallet for the nonprofit, which is completely non-compliant. That would be like being a nonprofit that just takes cash like under the table out of, your front shop versus taking money through a bank. Like when someone sends you a wire through a bank, it's not up to you. Or if someone like pays you with a credit card, it's up to Visa, right? On the back end, it's not up to Starbucks to stop you and make sure that you own the credit card that you're swiping at a gateway. It's like Visa's running to make sure that credit card isn't blacklisted. Starbucks is not going to have any tools that like the FBI isn't going to have. So when it comes to like the nonprofits and how they can quote unquote like screen a donor, they're opening an account with Gemini. That's our backend. And then we're layering in a widget that collects donor information. The information we collect in our screening is just to give information to the nonprofit so they can follow up with the donor. There's no chance in hell that like a nonprofit or we as a nonprofit service company are going to figure out a way to stop criminals that like the FBI, the SEC, FinCEN, regulators, banks, financial institutions like aren't catching. And like we're going to figure out that that money is illicit when literally no one else could. So when it comes to being a nonprofit that takes crypto, your job is to open up like legitimate financial institutions or accounts with legitimate financial institutions. And then like Gemini is using NASDAQ market surveillance. They're using, I'm trying to think, they use a handful of them, but like Chainalysis and companies like that do all of the tracking and reporting and work with law enforcement. And then your form as a nonprofit, just collect whatever you want to like get on the donor to follow up with them. And then in terms of benefits and risk, it's as risky for you to take donations through Gemini as it is for Gemini to be a company. So like if you're a nonprofit who wants to take crypto, it's just up to you. Do you think crypto should be transacted in legally? And then if that's the case, why would you not be a beneficiary of those transactions? Would be kind of my overall answer.
Makes sense. And going back to Yanis is asking about if you offer custodian services for nonprofits, as he mentioned that whilst most of them do convert straight into fiat currency, some of them will maybe sit on the crypto. How do they do that? Is it you looking after the crypto for them, or do they just take it?
Yeah, so if you're using a custodial service, like we're not like a payment processor. We set up all the tech. We're more like we have a consulting layer to like help them fundraise. And then we like take a percentage on donations as like a part of what we do. And it depends from client to client, the size of the nonprofit, what they need us to do. And we just try to figure out like a relationship with the nonprofit. If we can help you get more donations and set up a system you otherwise can't, they pay us in the same way they would pay for any other service. When it comes to where the donations are going, it's hitting a Gemini account, like not an account that we're setting up. We're not an exchange. And then if they want to hold it like with a custodial solution, Gemini offers those custodial solutions. Right. We're not like building any sort of financial technology from scratch. We're just helping nonprofits access the network.
Cool. No, makes sense. And this is also asking, do you charge transaction fees for your services or setup fees? And what's your business model?
Yeah, so our business model is like a hybrid. So like the transaction fee and then the subscription fees that we have with the nonprofits, it varies based on the clients we work with. So I'd have to talk to a nonprofit and figure out like what exactly they need from us. And then we always have an arrangement that's just equitable based on that, but it's completely different from nonprofit to nonprofit. We just try to figure out like, okay, how much work are we doing bringing in the money? Like how much of the donations coming in are we going to be responsible for? Are we like developing the corporate social responsibility angles? Are we building out all the content? Are we targeting the companies? Are we coordinating your campaigns?
Or are you literally just helping them accept crypto?
Yeah. Right. And then, we charge based on that.
Cool. No, thank you. Martin is asking, are there any national tax reclaim opportunities when you donate crypto? I think you touched on there are some benefits there.
Yeah.
Martin's based in the UK. I don't know if you can give a specific answer to that.
Tax reclaim. I should have done more homework, obviously, based on your audience. Let me just pull up UK property tax for donations. In the US, let me see. You do not have to pay tax on land, property, or shares you donate to a charity. It looks like you guys have the same thing. I'd have to do more research because we have charities that we've set up in the UK. The other folks I work with are just like more intimately familiar with the compliance side of stuff and like the tax regulations in different jurisdictions. But it says here in gov.uk, you do not pay tax on land, property, or shares that you donate to charities, which would mean that applies to crypto as well as a property asset. In the US, which is what we usually base it off of, I broke it down at the beginning of the presentation, but pretty much you can donate it to the nonprofit. The nonprofit pays no taxes and you pay no taxes. And then like the smart thing to do from a tax arbitrage standpoint is to just buy back that amount of crypto. So if you're thinking about giving $10,000 to a nonprofit, give them $10,000 worth of Bitcoin and then buy $10,000 worth of Bitcoin immediately. All of the taxes that you built up when you bought Bitcoin at $1 and now it's worth 10,000, you just wiped away all of those tax burdens by giving to the charity.
Okay, thank you. And he's also asking, to what extent can crypto donations become a mechanism for money laundering?
Yeah, that's a huge misconception. So it can't. It's like a mental trick. If you own a charity, right? Like if the hackers owned Save the Children and then they sent donations to Save the Children and then they pulled that money out of Save the Children so that they could spend it, that's what money laundering is. When you send, if you're like a hacker, you did something illicit and you send that money to Save the Children, you don't get it back. So that's not money laundering. Like people were saying that when the news story came out also, they're like hackers took this money and they gave it to a nonprofit, like to launder the money. And it's like just giving your money away is not laundering. Like if I rob a bank and I just give that to somebody, that's not laundering money. You have to like move it around and then try to get new money out so you can hide the fact that you were connected to a crime. So the answer is no. If it turns out that like the CEO of some major charity is like the hacker themselves, and then they're donating sneakily through the charity and then pulling it out in the form of their salary, that would be money laundering, but that's of course almost impossible.
Right. Cool, no, thank you. Jill is asking, is there a minimum turnover of charities that you work with? Can smaller charities join your platform, or what's the minimum size of charity that you're able to work with and help?
Yeah, I'm not sure what she means by turnover, like turnover of
in terms of how much money they would bring in a year.
Oh, gotcha. We usually say like anything less than 100 grand a year, we shouldn't work with them just because, I mean, honestly, you probably should be investing in other things. If the charity makes less than like $100,000 in overall revenue, they're probably not using Hootsuite and like social media tools. They're probably not using traditional fundraising platforms to help them like take credit cards or design their site better to get more donations in the regular market. Once you're kind of established as a nonprofit, if you're making like even, $500,000 a year, like a sub $1 million charity, if you're established and you have a social media presence and you're adding this as another mode of giving, you can work with us. It's really just a matter of if they're stable. We don't want to have a bunch of nonprofits like out of different parts of Africa or Southeast Asia, like parts that are underdeveloped and they're just starting off a charity to spend, a lot of their time thinking about crypto fundraising. Because usually we view that as kind of like gambling. They're like, okay, we want to take some of our money, work with a company like the Giving Block, and then we're going to get this $1 million Bitcoin gift. It's like, you should probably take your resources and focus on like the nuts and bolts first.
Is it more because they would be paying you up front to get set up, or is it would just be a lot of time and effort for them to do so relative to the amount of donations they'd be able to accept?
Yeah, so we have no setup fees. It's all just like a service model, subscriptions. So we don't just like take money just for the setup, but it would depend on like what the charity needs, especially a smaller nonprofit would probably need a lot more handholding and work, and then like the trade-off isn't there anyway. So pretty much our smallest nonprofits are like a couple $100,000 a year, and then our biggest are like $1 billion a year, like some of the larger ones. But it's a pretty even split between like small and mid-sized charities and large charities.
And on that note, do you find that they tend to get the same sort of percentage of donations in crypto if they're the smallest ones, the largest ones, or have you got any trends about that? Which ones tend to get the most crypto donations?
Yeah, it's a really cool part about crypto in general. It's not like Save the Children doesn't get more donations, the average like very small charity on our platform, but it's a lot closer than people think. Like again, like Eve's Place, we know just got a $65,000 gift, or like Us for Warriors, a really small veterans group in the US. They do fantastic. Any charity that, even if they're small, if they have a Twitter account and they're like willing to use it and they start integrating crypto as a part of their messaging, like they're running a campaign online, but like a couple times throughout that campaign, they're like, by the way, we take crypto, and like tagging the companies we're working with, it works. So pretty much a good stat also. So literally no charity that's worked with us over a contract period, we do annual contracts, has raised less than what they've spent with us, period, regardless of what the contract looked like. So we have 100% positive ROI. And then obviously everything is structured around that. So that includes the smaller ones and the larger ones. Larger charities obviously tend to outperform the smallers, but we have no one who's, not making more than they're spending.
Sure. No, thank you. Ludovic is asking, is it possible for the organization to own a multi-sig wallet? And what about DAO contracts? Or does literally everything just go through Gemini and however they get it set up?
Yeah, I'm trying to think, like, I don't know how to answer that question from like a regulatory standpoint. So like the answer is like, yeah, kind of. We're usually pretty anti like crazy innovative stuff when it comes to the nonprofit side. If the nonprofit is already set up to take crypto, they're successfully fundraising it, to work with companies in the space, and then they want to do something really innovative. What we saw early on was they were like charities that were afraid of crypto and didn't want to do it. And then we had charities trying to build like patient registries using blockchain technology, or like trying to get into DAOs or like fintech stuff where they're like doing DeFi stuff, like trying to move money into pools and do crazy shit, including DAOs. I'd say for the most part, charities should really focus on like the meat and potatoes first. But in the event, we could look into that, I guess, DAOs and other forms of payment. But generally speaking, you should open an account with an exchange, make sure it's fully compliant, the cash is FDIC insured. It just doesn't make sense unless you're doing something really wild.
Yeah, thanks. And someone's asking what's the difference between you and AidCoin and AidPay, and also whether you convert the Bitcoin to fiat straight away for the nonprofit, or do you give the Bitcoin that they receive directly to the NGO or to the nonprofit?
Yeah, so the Bitcoin goes directly, for the second question, directly to the nonprofit.
And then it's up to them if they convert straight away to fiat or if they hold.
So it hits their Gemini account directly, like right into an account that's owned institutionally by the nonprofit. And then we run a program that'll automatically convert it to cash if they want to run that as a part of their program. And then the difference between AidCoin and AidPay. So this is a super important distinction. Like charity tokens are the dumbest idea in crypto. Like it's the stupidest thing, and like everyone's been doing it for forever. We've been so vocal and anti on this for all of time. People try to make a charity token because like their heart's in the right place, because they think we can raise money as a part of it, and then that could also benefit nonprofits. Moving between cryptocurrencies is a taxable event. So if you made $1 billion on Bitcoin and then you tried to engage in like an AidCoin or like one of these charity token type platforms, if you're moving even behind the scenes into that charity token before it hits a nonprofit account, your tax incentive evaporates. You just triggered a taxable event by moving into the AidCoin, and now you're going to get a bill from the IRS. It was $1 billion for $200 million worth of taxes you otherwise wouldn't be paying if you could donate the crypto directly. So we have crypto. Crypto can be given directly to nonprofits. The idea that we need to create a new token so that you can give them a donation is ludicrous. So obviously I feel very strongly on that one, but don't use charity tokens. You'll lose your tax incentive, and people don't talk about this. They get tricked by it all the time. Donate your crypto directly. And if a nonprofit only takes Bitcoin, you're holding ETH, don't donate to that nonprofit. Donate to a nonprofit that takes ETH. Like make sure you stay in your token, or else you're going to trigger a taxable event as you jump from one to the other.
Interesting, thank you. And Yanis is asking, what's the biggest challenge with onboarding nonprofits? And is it getting them to understand crypto, or is it tech adoption?
That's a very good question. It depends on the charity, for sure. I guess, yeah, tech adoption. Any nonprofits that are like really tech savvy, like once we get on the phone, like they get that crypto is a thing. They kind of get how it works. They know how to add a widget to their site. The hardest challenge for onboarding nonprofits with us is because we do it the right way, opening an institutional account. So a nonprofit could just like open up a MetaMask or something, or just like open up a wallet somewhere to take crypto. And nonprofits have been doing that, but that's not allowed. So we actually could obviously set up nonprofits a lot faster if we were just like opening up wallets and then giving them to the nonprofit, letting them paste that on our site or something. It could be done in a minute. They're actually going to Gemini. The account application can take like an hour just to fill out the app. And then once they're approved, like we need to help them set up their account the right way, and then like integrate the widget onto their website and do all of these steps, add the copy to their website so it ranks for search, add it to our platform, get copy from them so we can make their profile pages, then help them actively fundraise it. The hardest part is opening an institutional financial account so that you're actually using a regulated authority to take your donations. Otherwise, it's one, unsafe, and two, not allowed.
Sure, no thanks. And the last question from Yanis. What would a nonprofit choose if not giving block? Can they go directly to Gemini and other exchanges and deal with them, or what's your value add? Tough last question.
Yeah, and if people have questions that are not like related directly to the business model, like talking about companies or stuff in this ecosystem, I'm happy to talk about it also. I didn't want to make it just like a pitch. But the reason nonprofits would use us is pretty much there's 3 problems you're trying to solve for as a nonprofit, and every other solution only does one. So if you're just trying to take crypto donations, like an equivalent of like a PayPal for crypto, if you're trying to take like a BitPay or a Coinbase Commerce, just set something up quick so that a donation can go through to you and you can take crypto. Like there's plenty of stuff out there, but like the reason almost no nonprofits, like legit nonprofits of any size, are using PayPal for donations is the same reason you would use us for crypto. We generate most of the donation volume. We're connecting with the companies and partners. We're running active campaigns. We're helping them with an active strategy. We're setting up like site pages so that they rank. All of the support and stuff that you would need from like setup to like generating natural traffic, people looking to give crypto on a platform. We're the only ones with a platform. And then third, the active fundraising strategy, like running actual campaigns. Pretty much the answer, I guess the short of it is like a third of our clients come to us from like a BitPay or a Coinbase Commerce, because setting yourself up to take crypto and then just like sitting on your hands for 6 years and like hoping someone who has crypto stumbles on the Save the Children site is like not a good approach. Like we're actively fundraising crypto and our platform is like where people go to give it.
Cool, thank you. Last question for you. We've got a question from UNICEF in India. What's the best way to get set up and get an account on your platform?
Yeah, so I'm sure whoever's writing, like there's probably other stakeholders who want to like talk through and ask questions. We would just set up a call, and then like whoever has questions about or like wants to demo the product and talk through like what we do, how it works, we just get on a call for half an hour and work through that. And then depending on your needs, we would just like contract it out and start working with you.
And they can get that set up just on your website?
Yeah, you can go on our website and book a call, or you can shoot me an email, pat@thegivingblock.com or info@thegivingblock.com if you want to just hit the whole company. Yeah, just shoot us a note and we'll demo the product, like talk through all of your questions.
Perfect, thanks. Last interesting question from Tara. Are there any charities that you wouldn't work with, such as anti-privacy or political, or charities based in high-risk jurisdictions?
100%.
Good question, Tara.
It's a great question. So yeah, no, we're not going to set up like a nonprofit in North Korea or just a random one. If you're serving people in North Korea, it's not like a political thing. Like if you're helping political prisoners, like in North Korea, like get research, something like that, like fine. It's not like based on what the subject is, but for like legal reasons, we can't like set up accounts who or with nonprofits who own like bank accounts in sanctioned countries. Like there's all these sorts of things from a legal standpoint. From like a political standpoint, unless it's like super, super crazy, no, we'll work with nonprofits as long as it seems like what you're doing is good. And I don't mean good from like a left or right political spectrum type thing. It just can't be like crazy. Like you can't just be like bombing oil ships. Like, you know what I mean? Like eco-terrorism.
Sure.
Yeah.
How much vetting do you do of charities? If they approach you, do you have a thorough research process where you look at what they're doing and to check also in terms of like charities, for example, because there's been so much talk about high percentages of the money they receive not necessarily going to the end projects. Do you do a lot of research into their transparency and how they spend their money and what they spend their money on and what their actual I guess process or spending is relative to their marketing? Or do you leave that to the discretion of the people that want to donate?
Yeah. So 2 questions there. One is like general overall vetting to make sure that the charity is like not a scam. And then the other one is like overhead, right? Like how transparent are they about like $1 goes in, $1 goes here type thing. So like one is like a scam and then one is ideologically like not wanting to pay for overhead. For the scam portion, like we're super thorough. So in the US, they're like everyone's 990 is super transparent. The UK, I know, is something similar, but not every country has all that stuff. Public. For religious institutions, we have to have like actual conversations about like how much money they have coming in and everything else. But for charities, we can see, you know, all of their staff who get paid above a certain level, like who they are, what they get paid. We can see how much money they have coming in, how much money they have going out. We can see like if they're making enough money to be consistent, you know, their board members are public. And then the second thing, to open the account with Gemini, you have to KYC in. So whoever's opening that account and has access to it, like they have to submit their driver's license and ID to open an account with us. We're not just like putting a Bitcoin wallet on somebody's site. Yeah, so they're hooking up institutional financial accounts associated with nonprofits as their bank that they can take the crypto, or rather the fiat, out with. And then in terms of setting up their Gemini account, like all the people who are filling out the form and getting access to that account have to be approved through KYC AML. Oh, sorry. And then the second portion is like overhead. I'm actually, generally speaking, very pro overhead in a way that most people aren't, but that's like a personal ideological thing. I hate nonprofits that have no overhead. I find it aggravating. I think too much overhead. There are definitely nonprofits that like, spend money on, going to retreats together and they're on an island drinking Mai Tais. That's nonsense. We don't want to work with charities like that if they're like clearly, like Clinton Foundation, Trump Foundation to be anti-political. Both of those people obviously have like bullshit charities. For the most part, any nonprofit that doesn't have overhead, though, I personally wouldn't support because I want someone who's sitting at a desk coming up with ideas. I don't want to give $1 and then you give that dollar to someone else. And like no one's sitting at a desk going like, what if that dollar went here? Can we organize the scientists? Can we talk about the way the FDA approval process works for these drugs? Can we bring patients in to have a roundtable with those scientists? Like, what if we got more Black people in clinical trials? Let's form a gathering. Let's do a summit. Let's hit Capitol Hill. Like, those are the charities that I support, and that requires paying staff. So that's more just me on my high horse. But I wouldn't be anti-overhead if I were most people, just based on what I know about charities.
It just depends on how they're using it.
Yeah, good overhead is better than no overhead, in my personal opinion. Let's see. Oh, did we lose her? Tried. Oh, thegivingblock.com. Sorry, not the Living Block. That is a good company name though. Also, I think we lost Erica. I don't know where she is. Any reference with charities involved in promoting the SDGs? For sure, a lot of charities measure their goals against them. I can't think of any off the top of my head that like the fundraisers we're doing with them are directly measured against sustainable development goals. But we used to actually consider when we were setting up the platform what our categories were. We thought about just breaking up by sustainable development goals as buckets. We ended up avoiding it because we think they're less clear than the ones we came up with. But in general, yeah, it seems to be a good way for nonprofits to measure against it. I would say most nonprofits probably have some component of what they do measured against that on like a page on their site. It's probably a little more vague than most people think. Any experience with social digital currency or charities currently working with digital coins but not having enough track? I'm not sure if you mean traction or tracking, like not being able to see the donations coming in via crypto. Social digital currency. David Parejo, I need you to reword that question a little bit. I don't know if you mean like social credit scoring when you say that. Yeah. I'll need a little bit more clarity there. Smarts from NASDAQ, question mark? Or you're asking if that's the actual NASDAQ marketing surveillance technology? Possibly. I've always just called it NASDAQ marketing or market surveillance technology because that's the way it's always been relayed to me. I didn't set up their system, so I'm not sure. We just kind of rely on them as like a regulated financial institution. If you mean they're a social good organization that's accepting digital currency, but they're not gaining traction in terms of actually generating gifts into their nonprofit, I would say depending on what the organization is, they should reach out to us because our job is pretty much to help them successfully fundraise crypto. I'm not sure how else to answer your question though. So no startup fees, turnover of 100,000, and a charity can apply, and you'll help even if the most Luddite of people get sorted. I'm writing for a horse charity. It depends. So when you say Luddite, like if you guys just need a bunch of help getting set up, like for sure, we'll work with you. If it's Luddite, as in like half of your leadership team is against it, and we just need to go to war with them for a couple months, like set you up to take crypto, we'll eventually have to make like a business decision. Because we have had a handful of charities, especially early on, that like didn't know anything about any form of technology. And it was like brutal for our ability to day get stuff done. We were getting like 2 or 3 phone calls a day. So we're definitely careful. We want the organization to be one that's like worth working with. We don't want any psychos. But yeah, if they're worried about crypto and they don't know a whole lot about it, like for sure, we would just book a call and we would jump on for something like this. And then, in 15, 20, 30 minutes, whoever on your board or your leadership team wants to ask us questions, talk through, see the demo, hear about the charities we work with, see the actual fundraising results, look at testimonials from nonprofits, see some of the campaigns we've run. We can go through all of that. And then if it makes sense, we can obviously work with you. I'm just looking at Jillian's last portion. I'll do the PR here in Ireland. Hell yeah. Patrick Aidan Duffy is my name. If you're wondering how Irish I am, I obviously don't have the accent, but Do you feel a difference that it's harder to do fundraising in Central Europe compared to UK, US? I wish I could answer that question effectively. Like, we just don't have enough experience. Like, I was working at a nonprofit full time as of July of last year. I'd spent a year and a half before then setting up nonprofits to take crypto. But like the active fundraising piece and like generating results and tracking those metrics on like a platform level scale, that was like end of last year that we really started doing that successfully. And we didn't really start building our team until beginning of this year. We've gone from like 12 nonprofits to like 110 nonprofits though for context. So like we've been doing quite well in generating results. I don't have enough data on Central Europe though. I would assume it'd be fine. As long as you have the tax incentive, you're going to do great. If you don't have the tax incentive, but people can still write it off, but not the cap gains part, those countries seem to do totally fine as well. But that cap gains thing is super sweet if you have that, depending on what Central European country. Contact details, yes. Just plugged it in the chat. And then David Parejo. There are many NGOs that built up digital currency to promote local trading. How could you help them to replicate and scale up their models? This is like the fifth attempt with David. I feel like my head's going to explode. I'm trying so hard, man. Built up digital currency.
Tiago's asking about criteria for non-US charities, particularly in Brazil, that he's thinking about launching a fundraising campaign there for a cause.
Yeah. So like we can't do like crowdfunding type stuff. So like we can't help you fundraise in crypto for a charity for like all sorts of compliance reasons, because then you'd be collecting crypto and then it goes through you into the charity. So all the donors who hit your account like lose their tax incentive, and then you're also potentially committing fraud. I don't know how else to word it. But if that charity wanted to get set up to take crypto and then you wanted to do a fundraiser for them online, like through that system, 100%. Let me just check to make sure Brazil can use Gemini. And then for any nonprofit that can't use Gemini, like Gemini doesn't support all areas, like doesn't have all areas of operation, they have a lot. I can, of course, like help you figure something out, even if you can't work with us directly. Gemini, Brazil. Yeah, it looks like Brazil is covered. You should be fine. Brazil, Argentina, Chile, and Peru. So it would go straight to them. Yes, Tiago, what I'm saying is the charity would have to open an institutional account to receive crypto. And then that would be fine. Then you could fundraise through their account there. I'm just saying that like the leadership of the nonprofit would have to be down with crypto for it to go straight to them, just as a point of clarification. If they want to take crypto, we can easily set them up. We've been hit up by a lot of people in crypto who were like, can I do a Bitcoin fundraiser for the nonprofit? Like we had American Lung Association. We had a guy wanting to do a crypto fundraiser for them specifically at one point recently. And it's like, yeah, but you can't like collect Bitcoin in a Bitcoin wallet and then send it all to a charity. So then if the charity is going to open a wallet, we wouldn't work with them if they open just like a random crypto wallet. We would need them to open like an institutional account with Gemini so that it's like fully compliant. Yeah.
Cool. I think that's the end of your questions. What I can do is just connect you back to David or send out your contact details to everyone who can then contact with you directly.
Yeah, 100%. And if there's anyone on the call here who like works with a crypto company, please reach out. Like we didn't get to touch on a lot, but most of the amazing stuff we do is like made possible by working with crypto companies, and crypto companies are kind of like the core beneficiary, like sometimes even more than nonprofits in terms of like results we can generate from like a marketing standpoint and a PR standpoint. Like we've gotten a lot of really awesome companies partner with amazing nonprofits, and it drives, adoption of their tech and helps the nonprofits fundraise. Like those sorts of intersections are super important for us as well.
Cool. David has clarified what he meant there earlier. He's just saying that he set up at an NGO that he works at a digital coin to promote local trade, for example, being able to pay with that coin to buy coffee or other products from fair trade, and that the local community can use that coin to trade for other products and services. Can you help to replicate or scale that up, or is that like what you said about the charity coin whereby it's taxable, so that's not really something that you'd be dealing with?
Yeah, I'm pretty, just at first glance, like you could show me something about it. Maybe it's amazing. And the coin that you invented works in a way that all of the existing cryptocurrencies can't. If there's like a functionality standpoint, then potentially. But I would say almost certainly not. Like if you're like forking an existing cryptocurrency, calling it something else, then using it for like a separate network, I'd just say like, why aren't you using Bitcoin or Ethereum or an existing cryptocurrency, even a stable coin, let's say, to do those? transactions. I think 99% of cryptocurrencies don't need to exist. That's more of like a personal position. And then if it's not supported by exchanges, then like they're not moving onto and off of like the regulated networks that like we're comfortable with and our charities are comfortable with. So I say generally no. If you have your own cryptocurrency token or you're working for like a really small scale one that isn't listed on major exchanges, that's probably too high risk for us. And then like the charities reputationally.
Cool. No, I think that's the end of the questions, and conscious of your time. Pat, thank you so much for giving up your time. Really, really grateful to you. I'm so sorry about my internet. I think as everybody, at least in the UK, understands, we're kind of still in lockdown. I left London in March to the countryside, so internet is less good here. But I'm really sorry for that. But everyone, thank you so much for joining and for all of your questions.
Thank you so much for having me.